Good evening. Welcome to this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show. My name is Leon Jones. Tonight, I'm going to get right back into some famous black inventors. Now, I should have done this during Black History Month. However, there are numerous black inventors who have played a big part in our society. Tonight, I'm going to introduce you to Mr. Charles Drew. Now, a little bit of background on Mr. Charles Drew. Charles Drew was born on June 3rd, 1904 in Washington, D.C. He was an African American physician who developed ways to process and store blood in blood banks. That's also plasma he stored in blood banks as well. He directed the blood plasma programs of the United States and Great Britain in World War II, but resigned after a ruling that the blood of African Americans would be segregated. He died April 1st, 1950. Now, some early life. A pioneering African American medical researcher, Charles R. Drew, made some groundbreaking discoveries in the storage and processing of blood for transfusions. He also managed two of the largest blood banks during World War II. Again, Drew grew up in Washington, D.C. as the oldest son of a carpet layer. In his youth, Drew showed great athletic talent. He won several medals for swimming in his elementary years and later became a football player. And he branched out in other sports such as basketball. Now, after he graduated from Dunbar High School in 1922, Drew went to Amherst College on a sports scholarship. There, he distinguished himself on the track and football teams. Drew completed his bachelor's degree at Amherst in 1926, but didn't have enough money to pursue his dream of attending medical school. He worked as a biology instructor and a coach for Morgan College, now Morgan State University in Baltimore, for 2 years. In 1928, he applied to medical schools and enrolled at McGill University in Montreal, Quebec. At McGill University, Drew quickly proved to be a top student. He won a prize in neuroanatomy and was a member of the Alpha Omega Alpha, a medical honor society. Graduating in 1933, Drew was second in his class and earned both a DM, which is a Doctor of Medicine, and a Master of Surgery degree. He did his internship and residency at the Royal Victoria Hospital and the Montreal General Hospital. Now, during his time, Drew studied with Dr. John Beatty, and they examined problems and issues regarding blood transfusion. After his father's death, Drew returned to the United States. He became an instructor at Howard University's medical school in 1935. The following year, he did surgery residence at Freedman's Hospital in Washington, D.C., in addition to his work at the university. In 1938, Drew received a Rockefeller Fellowship to study at Columbia University and trained at the Presbyterian Hospital in New York City. There, he continued his exploration of blood-related matters with John Scudder. Drew developed a method for processing and preserving blood plasma, or blood without cells. Plasma lasts much longer than blood, making it possible to be stored or banked for long periods of time. He discovered that the plasma could be dried and then reconstituted when needed. His research served as the basis of his doctorate thesis, Bank Blood, and he received his doctorate degree in 1940. Drew became the first African American to earn this degree from Columbia University. And after World War II started in Europe, or it raged in Europe, Drew was asked to head up a special effect known as Blood for Britain. He organized the collection and processing of blood plasma from several New York hospitals and the shipments of these life-saving materials overseas to treat casualties in the war. Except for one report, Drew helped collect roughly 14,500 pints of plasma. In 1941, Drew spearheaded another blood bank effort, this time for the American Red Cross. He worked on developing a blood bank to be used for United States military personnel, but not long into his tenure, Drew became frustrated with the military's request for segregating the blood donated by African Americans. At first, the military did not want to use blood from African Americans, but they later said it could be only used for African American soldiers. Drew was outraged by this racist policy and resigned his post after only a few months. After creating two of the first blood banks, Drew returned to Howard University in 1941. He served as a professor there. Heading up the university's Department of Surgery, he became the chief surgeon at Freedman's Hospital. Later that year, he became the first African American examiner for the American Board of Surgery. In 1944, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, known as the NAACP, honored Drew with its 1943 Springer Medal for the highest and noblest achievement by an African American. During the preceding year of years, the award was given in recognition of Drew's blood plasma collection and distribution efforts. For the final years of his life, Drew remained an active and highly regarded medical professional. He continued to serve as the chief surgeon at Freedman's Hospital and a professor at Howard University. Now, of course, on April 1st, 1950, Drew and three other physicians attended a medical conference at the Tuskegee Institute of America. Drew was behind the wheel when his vehicle crashed near Burlington, North Carolina. His passengers survived, but Drew succumbed to his injuries. He left behind his wife, Minnie, and 4 children. Drew was only 45 years old at the time of his death, and it is remarkable how much he was able to accomplish in such a short amount of time. As the Reverend Jerry Moore said at Drew's funeral, Drew had a life which crowds into a handful of years' significance so great men will never be able to forget it. Since his passing, Drew has received countless posthumous honors. He was featured in the United States Postal Service's Great Americans stamp in 1981, and his name appears on educational institutions around the country. Now, let me say something. I was in the military, and when we talk about racism, racism is alive and well. But going back to when Mr. Drew was creating blood banks, well, even blood was segregated. But finally, blood was able to go to African American soldiers. But I just want everybody to step back and look. During this time of World War II, here in America, blood was used for Canadian and British soldiers. But without Mr. Drew, I'll call him Dr. Drew because he earned every bit of it. When you go to Columbia University, which is an Ivy League school in New York, you definitely have achieved something. He wasn't that old when he passed. But remember something. And I have to tell all the African brothers and sisters this. These are the forefathers. And the reason why these names are mentioned is because they left a legacy, because they created something that we utilize today. Because of his inspiration and his work, we have blood banks. And blood transfusions are used all over the world today, whether it was from the military and even hospitals. So you have to take a step back and appreciate what we are getting from the forefathers. In those days, and this was in the 20th century, although black people weren't in slavery, something occurred that was much different than in the slavery days. See, during slavery, yes, black people were hanged, but they weren't hanged as much. Why? Because slaves were property, and you don't want to destroy your property. Now, during the 1900s, the 10s, the 20s, the 30s, all the way up until the 1960s and even into the 1970s, depending on where you resided, that's where you had a lot of hangings, particularly down in Mississippi and Alabama and the Deep South. Well, with all that going on, there were still black people achieving some fantastic inventions. And I thank Mr. Drew for this invention, because if he hadn't created blood transfusion, now maybe somebody else would have, but they didn't. He did. And you don't hear his name in many of the public schools or colleges. Again, if you're deeply rooted in black history, you will understand where I'm coming from. And when I make videos talking about black history, I'm trying to create some positivity, because, again, with the younger generation, they might not understand any of these forefathers because they haven't been taught or they just simply don't care. But when you go back, you open up a book, you do some research, you'll find that there are a lot of products that African Americans invented that we use today. There were videos that I did during Black History Month where the elevator was invented, the ironing board. All of the products were actually produced and invented by gentlemen who didn't have any education. But they had one thing. That was a goal. And when you have a goal and a dream, you put it on paper and you follow through with it. And that's called a legacy, because that legacy of the products, they have been passed down from generation to generation, and we use them today. The only thing that is happening is companies are just making improvements on what was already invented. So you have to give a shout out to a gentleman like Dr. Drew, because he was the forefather of the blood bank. And it was his invention that kept many soldiers alive. And not only soldiers, many individuals who are civilians. And it's very important to understand that a lot of your products that we have on display and we're currently using were invented by African Americans. And that's my commentary for this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show for this evening, Thursday, March 9th, 2017. Tune in to the 411 Talk Zone radio show every Monday from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Blog Talk Radio. Guest call-in number is 215-383-5785. If you like my videos, please share and subscribe to the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube so I can continue to give you quality information for educational purposes from a professional and mature perspective. Now, on this channel, I don't engage in debates, controversy, or emotional issues, nor do I participate in drama and or unnecessary bickering. My channel is strictly for educational purposes. And on this channel, you're going to learn topics from history to health and politics, and I'm going to include business and careers, because I want to give you the tools no matter if you're 18 or 88, so you can have an understanding of your history and how to survive in the real world. Because the real world today is challenging and it's going to get worse. So you're going to have to strap on your seatbelts and start taking information from individuals who have been there before. I want you all to know that knowledge is power. If you have a business or a topic that you would like for me to discuss on YouTube or Blog Talk Radio, please email me at lej6521@gmail.com. And if you have a comment, I like comments, please leave it in the comment section under the video. But make sure that your comments are pithy. No bloviating, pettifogging, or filibustering if you wish to opine. Now, time for some shout-outs. Shout out to Tobias Orion. Shout out to Brother Full Circle. Shout out to Sister Sweet June. Check her channel out. Check out Rakeem James. He's known as Rashawn Delay. And I'm glad his channel is starting to grow. Of course, earlier his channel got taken down. But the elder, Mr. James, has come back in full force. And I want everybody to look at his information, because I look at his channel and I learn a lot from him as well. So please respect your elders. Shout out to Conscious Effort, young brother from Texas, doing well. Shout out to Karen Kennedy. Shout out to the Internet Granny. Shout out to Bernie Tree 66. Shout out to Sandy Pooh. Shout out to Reg the Bad Guy. Shout out to the Real Deal from Gary, Indiana. I answered your question about how to improve yourself on YouTube, Brother Dill. You got to get back to me. lej6521@gmail.com. And we would talk off camera. I'm right here in Portage, Indiana, brother. Got your back. Shout out to Brother B. Hack, Benjamin Hack. If you want to know about some tax services, check out thetaxpeople.com. That's Benjamin Hack's business. Black owned. Please support it. Shout out to Brother Warren Williams. Shout out to Brother Davalon Chapman, known as DC. Shout out to O'Shea Duke Jackson, Ringo TV Raw. Shout out to the Angry Man channel. Shout out to Big Body Matt Coley. Changed this channel name. It's Big Body Productions. Shout out to the Healing Palace with Felicia Ganiu from Speedway, Indiana. Jared Haggerty. He's an Israelite. He spits a lot of fire. Want to check his channel out. Shout out to Brother Paul DeMercado. Mrs. G's Cooking Show Green. And shout out to this channel, WorkingDadLLC.com, the Negro Manosphere, and also PressView.com. That's a black social media channel. And please, we must support black-owned businesses, black economy. And particularly brothers, we must support each other. And sisters, we need to support each other as well. And if you have businesses, we need to support each other as African-American people, because at the end, we are all we have. And I just want to say God bless you all. That's it for this video. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. Remember, be gentle and respectful to each other, and have a wonderful and blessed night. Good night.